So Vincent Maurice Hockett, also known as Dichotomy. I am a regional sales director for an IT company and also a professional poet. So I started wearing locks about 15 years ago. I wish that I could say that there was an epiphany or kind of a spiritual reason why I did it. Essentially what happened was I was moving from Atlanta to New Jersey at the time for a new job. And I decided that I wanted to grow my hair out. I had no idea that it would turn into locks. I think at first I just kind of wanted the twists. And so I switched back and forth between twists and braids actually for about 6 months, close to a year. And then my stylist at the time said that, I needed to pretty much kind of make a commitment to either go ahead and lock it or to just kind of wash it out or wear an afro. And so at that point I decided to lock it. That was about 15 years ago, and I've been wearing locks ever since. So there was pushback in both. And I am hesitant to use the word has been or was pushback, because there actually continues to be pushback even now. So my role at the time, I was a systems engineer, a system consultant. So I was primarily responsible for putting together IT solutions for corporate customers. I made it a point to try to make sure that I kept my locks as neat as possible. So I was actually going every 2 weeks to get them retwisted to make sure that they at least looked as neat as they could be and had any new growth kind of retwisted at the time. It became quite evident, though, as I started to grow them, that it wasn't something that was necessarily embraced by the customers that I was supporting, nor by the management team at the time. And so they had made comments about my hair in a joking manner, right? So as not to say anything directly. And so what I noticed is that while it wasn't embraced by the customers I supported, nor my management, I had made a conscious decision that that was what I wanted to do, and that I allowed my performance in the role to really kind of circumvent any apprehensions that they had. Now, trust and believe, I figured that if I had ever lost my position at that time and had to go and look for another role at another company, that I would have to cut it. However, fortunately enough for me, I was able to be successful in the role and continue to wear my locks. What I did notice, though, was that as I looked to try to progress in my career, so I started off as a system consultant. I am a regional director now, so I actually manage consultants. The timetable and the process for me to move from one role to another took much longer than it should have. And I actually had some people come and pull me to the side and say, hey, you as a regional director, you're kind of representative of the company for the customers that they support and the executives of those customers. And, there's a little apprehension in your appearance being one that is kind of embraced by the company to do that. And so they were basically saying that I would probably be able to have that transition happen a lot sooner if I had a much cleaner look, which was more embraced by corporate America. I decided not to do that and eventually got the role. But, if I'm being realistic, it probably took 5 years longer than it should have, simply because of those concerns. So when I started doing poetry, I did have locks. Well, I've been writing poetry ever since I was in the 4th grade, ever since I was young. But once I started doing it professionally, I did already have the locks at the time. The irony in the journey for me is that it was almost kind of opposite in the way that things progressed. The starting of my locks wasn't necessarily from an epiphany, and there wasn't kind of like this spiritual story behind it. But as my locks grew and as I progressed as a person and kind of embraced who I was and my heritage and my culture and started doing poetry, they became a very important part of me. And it was almost kind of like my rebellion, because I wanted to prove that you could be successful in corporate America, that you could look the way that I looked, you could have locks, you could have beard, can have a beard and look at it, still be successful and embraced, right? I mean, it's ironic that recently there were some court rulings that were made that companies actually had the ability to, to fire people or not hire people based on the facts that they had locks, right? And so I found that extremely interesting. And so for me, it became, like I said, it became a spiritual experience. It became something that became very important to me, that I wanted to prove that I could have the level of success and that it should be based on, who I am and my capabilities, and not necessarily, my hair. And so, as a poet, as I've continued to do that, you're absolutely right. Like, it is become synonymous with me. It is something that I embrace. It is something that is just as much a part of me as the color of my skin. So it's been an interesting transition. One of the things that it taught me is that, people have many different types of biases over a bunch of different things. And you really kind of have to have self-love and self-confidence to really be able to do that, right? Because the easy thing to me to do, I probably could have been moved up in my career a lot sooner, been a little bit more successful had I chosen to take a different path, right? But it was something that became important to me, and that was something that I wanted to do. And so that's something I learned about myself. And the other thing, I think you alluded to it, is the patience, man. When I first started having locks, I have so much more respect for women who, go to the beauty shop and they're sitting in there for 2, 3, 4 hours getting it done. I used to be able to go get a haircut, 30, 40 minutes, I'm out, right? And so now to go through that process, it really is, kind of an experience. It isn't just something that you kind of go in there and get done, but there's a camaraderie that's there with other people that have locks, and understanding and a much deeper meaning. And so I think those two things are really something that I've enjoyed as I've gone through this lock journey. Yeah, so I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I actually think that it was an amazing kind of combination, the way that you match things up, right? The interesting thing for me is that I always consider myself, Dichotomy is my poetry name, but there's just so many different aspects, right? And I think that the contradictions and contrasts that kind of exist, right? Those people who know me in corporate America would never think that I'm a poet, and those people who know me as a poet would never think that I was in corporate America, right? And so normally those two worlds operate completely separate of one another, and I think that what you were able to capture, in that photo shoot was a combination of both, right? You can look at there and you can see me as a poet, or you can look at that shoot and you can see me as, a professional or an executive. And I think that was really kind of the amazing thing about me, about the shoot, was how you were able to put it together, how you were able to blend those two worlds and kind of do that. And when I saw the pictures, I was amazed, right? I've done my fair photo shoots over the years, obviously kind of being a performer, and I would probably have to say immediately that the set of pictures that you came up with by far are my favorite. It's probably the best experience overall that I've had. Like I said, your ability to be able to capture different styles, to put all those things together. There were a couple of shots where I had to stop and think, was that really me, right? I was just kind of amazed at how beautiful they came out. So I couldn't have been more happier with how it turned out. They say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So I want to tell her that she is beautiful every time I behold her. Marvel when I see her. Others want to be her, fall to my knees every time that I see her. Just as I can look up and thank God for the day he decided to mold her. Praise the fact he even allowed me to meet her. Strong facial features. Walks with this pace full of grace that carries the weight of the world on her shoulders. Daily, I seek her. Wanted to look her in the eye and tell that she is what love must have meant. Wanted to eat her, but starved myself of true love because I wanted her to be my sustenance. Angelic in her essence and presence, and she is something heaven must have sent, and she is perfect. So to try to change her into anything else is a sin for which you must repent. So all social media is at Dichotomy Poetry, DICHOTOMY, Dichotomy Poetry. So that's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. But you can also find my work on social media. So I have a YouTube channel for Dichotomy Poetry, and then in addition to that, all streaming services. So if you go on Spotify or Google Play or Apple Music, then I've got my work on there.